It started as a rumor that sounded almost too strange to be taken seriously. Somewhere between a casting leak and a fan theory, the name Jamie Dornan suddenly appeared next to one of the most iconic roles in cinematic history, Aragorn. At first, people laughed it off, assuming it was just another piece of online speculation that would disappear as quickly as it appeared. But within hours, the conversation exploded, spreading across forums, fan pages, and entertainment headlines with a force that no one could ignore. The reason for such a reaction wasn't hard to understand. Aragorn isn't just another character, he's a symbol, deeply tied to the legacy of the Lord of the Rings and everything it represents. For many fans, the role is inseparable from the image that has already been established over decades, a standard that feels almost impossible to replicate, let alone redefine. So the idea of someone like Dornan stepping into that world didn't just feel unexpected, it felt like a direct challenge to what audiences thought they knew. And yet, that's exactly what made the rumor so compelling. Because while the initial reaction leaned heavily toward skepticism, curiosity quickly followed. What if this wasn't as random as it seemed? What if there was a reason his name had surfaced in the first place? Suddenly, people weren't just dismissing the idea, they were debating it, analyzing whether Dornan could actually bring something new to a character so deeply rooted in tradition. At the center of that debate is the contrast between perception and reality. Dornan's public image, shaped in part by roles like 50 Shades of Grey, doesn't immediately align with the rugged, battle-hardened presence associated with Aragorn. He's often seen as controlled, composed, and understated, qualities that don't necessarily scream epic fantasy hero. But that assumption begins to shift when you look closer at his body of work, where moments of intensity and emotional depth suggest a range that hasn't always been fully recognized. Still, the gap between those qualities and the expectations surrounding Aragorn is what fuels the controversy. Fans aren't just questioning Dornan, they're questioning the idea of change itself. Can a character so iconic survive a reinterpretation that moves away from what audiences have come to expect? Or does that very possibility threaten the integrity of the story in a way that feels too risky to accept? As the rumor gained traction, attention turned to its origins, searching for anything that might confirm or deny its credibility. Some pointed to vague insider reports, others to cryptic social media posts that seemed to hint at casting discussions happening behind the scenes. There was no single source that could be definitively verified, yet the consistency of the whispers gave them a strange kind of weight. It was just enough to keep the possibility alive, even without concrete evidence. Then came the detail that pushed everything further, a supposed connection between Dornan and a creative team member rumored to be involved in a future adaptation. Whether real or coincidental, that link was enough to shift the conversation from impossible to maybe. And once that door opened, it didn't close again. Instead, it invited a wave of speculation that blurred the line between rumor and potential reality. What makes this situation particularly fascinating is how quickly opinions began to polarize. Some fans rejected the idea outright, insisting that Aragorn should remain untouched, a character defined by a specific image that cannot be replaced. Others, however, embraced the uncertainty, arguing that every generation deserves its own interpretation, even if it challenges long-held expectations. And in between those extremes lies a growing group of viewers who aren't sure what to think, but can't stop watching the debate unfold. Because at its core, this isn't just about casting. It's about identity, legacy, and the fear of change colliding with the excitement of possibility. Dornan's name may have sparked the conversation, but what it represents goes far beyond a single actor. It raises questions about how stories evolve, how characters are reimagined, and how audiences respond when something familiar is placed into an entirely new context. As the rumors continue to spread, one thing becomes increasingly clear: this isn't a passing moment. Whether the casting turns out to be real or not, the idea itself has already taken hold, reshaping the way people think about what's possible within a world they thought was already defined. And now, with speculation reaching new levels, the question is no longer just, could this happen? But, what would it mean if it did? As the rumor refused to fade, the conversation evolved into something far more intense than anyone expected. What began as a simple question, could Jamie Dornan really play Aragorn, quickly turned into a full-scale debate about identity, legacy, and the future of The Lord of the Rings itself. Fans across the world weren't just reacting, they were choosing sides, defending their vision of the character with a level of passion that revealed just how deeply Aragorn is embedded in cinematic history. On one side, there were those who rejected the idea outright, arguing that certain roles are simply untouchable. For them, Aragorn isn't just a character, it's a fixed image, a standard that has already been set and shouldn't be altered. Any attempt to reinterpret it, especially with an actor whose previous roles don't immediately align with that image, feels like a risk too great to take. And in that perspective, Dornan becomes less of a casting choice and more of a symbol of change they're not ready to accept. But on the other side, a very different argument began to gain traction. Supporters pointed out that every iconic role was once new, once uncertain, once questioned before being accepted. They argued that Dornan's more subtle, internal style of acting could bring a different kind of Aragorn to life, one that focuses less on physical dominance and more on emotional depth. Instead of repeating what has already been done, this version could explore the character's vulnerability, his hesitation, and the weight of responsibility in a way that feels more human than heroic. And that's where the debate becomes truly interesting, because it shifts from, can he do it, to, what kind of Aragorn do we want to see? The traditional image is powerful, but it's also familiar, almost expected. A new interpretation, however controversial, has the potential to expand the character in ways that audiences haven't experienced before. And whether that expansion is welcomed or rejected depends largely on how willing people are to let go of what they already know. At the same time, a new layer of uncertainty has begun to emerge. Despite the intensity of the discussion, there is still no concrete confirmation that the casting is real. No official statements, no verified announcements, just a growing collection of hints, assumptions, and connections that may or may not lead anywhere. This lack of clarity has only fueled the situation further, allowing speculation to fill the gaps where facts are missing. Some industry watchers suggest that this may be exactly how these rumors gain power. A single name appears, the audience reacts, and suddenly the idea takes on a life of its own, independent of whether it was ever grounded in reality. In that sense, the casting rumor becomes less about truth and more about possibility, an idea that spreads because it challenges expectations in a way that feels both risky and exciting. And yet, even if the rumor turns out to be nothing more than speculation, its impact is already undeniable. It has forced fans to confront their assumptions, to question what they value in a character, and to consider whether change is something to resist or embrace. Dornan's name may eventually disappear from the conversation, replaced by another or forgotten entirely, but the questions it raised will remain. Because in the end, this isn't just about whether Jamie Dornan will ever play Aragorn. It's about how audiences respond when something familiar is placed under pressure, when tradition meets reinterpretation, and when the future of a beloved story becomes uncertain. And perhaps that's why the rumor continues to hold attention, not because it has been confirmed, but because it has already changed the way people think. As the debate continues and the speculation refuses to settle, one question lingers above all others. If the casting were real, would audiences truly reject it, or would they eventually see something they never expected to believe? And that uncertainty is what keeps the story alive. Because once a rumor reaches this level, it stops being just a possibility and becomes part of the audience's imagination. Whether real or not, it plants an idea that refuses to disappear, one that continues to evolve every time someone dares to picture it differently.